live stream the show up.
Oh,
All right, here we go.
Whoa.
already unmuted. Already muted.
Good.
Dun, 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 dun.
Oh, you guys see it as well?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We are good. Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another episode of Omnibros Live. Riley here as your host this week, with of course our other panelists. I don't know what we'd call our round table. We've got Hardcover Reviews, Mr. Louise.
Howdy, howdy. How's everybody doing today?
And I've got, of course, Jess, the OmniDog.
Hit him with the hind.
Baba booey.
Baba booey.
All
How's
right.
it going?
So
Peace and love.
I
Peace
didn't
and
get to
love.
watch y'all's last week where I was gone because I was on vacation. Y'all had Gabe on, right?
Yeah, it's good you didn't see it because we mostly talked about you behind your back.
Yeah,
Well-
it wasn't pretty.
Shit. Well, how? Other than that, how'd it go?
It was good.
Yeah, it went
It was
great.
real good.
Awesome. Well, big thanks to Gabe for stepping up and filling my shoes while I was out. I was on vacation in Colorado. My wife and I went up there for a late anniversary vacation, so we kind of trekked around Denver, and then we went out to Grant, which is about an hour west of Denver, and just chilled in the mountains. Literally chilled because it was 3 feet of snow everywhere.
Oh, boss.
Oh, God, no.
There was no Wi-Fi, no TV, no nothing. So I completely detached from society for a few days.
That sounds like hell. I'm kidding. That sounds amazing, actually.
It was great.
Did
It was
did you detach by eating any brownies or cookies?
No. I as I've said multiple times, I don't partake in that. So, but my wife did.
Oh, good for her.
Hey.
She does. So I went to a dispensary with her, and it was so weird just being able to go in somewhere and like look around and have just like, cannabis products everywhere and be able to buy anything.
Yeah.
Recreational was legal there?
What up?
Recreational was legal there?
Yes, yeah, in
Oh,
Colorado. So yeah, I looked around and was like, wow, we got gummies and cookies and whatever. I've had people tell me like the gummies are really good, like you can't taste much of a difference, and also it's really easy to smuggle them back to your state. So for anyone who doesn't live somewhere that has recreational marijuana and stuff, it's very easy to smuggle it through TSA. The guy actually gave me a fist bump as we walked through.
Wow. Well, I'm moving to Colorado pretty soon. Then.
Yeah,
That's funny.
I mean, I'll take the snow if I can do that recreationally without having to worry.
yeah. One of my wife's former coworkers was texting her and was like, "So how much weed are you going to bring back to Texas?" Like, not much. And he was something like, "Oh, every year we go up and we drive, and I come back with like $500 worth of marijuana in the car." And I was like, "Holy crap! Like you spend that much?"
Yeah,
But
'cause
I guess I don't know.
you guys in Texas, it's a very conservative state, so it's very much against
Actually,
that, right?
Every major city in Texas is extremely liberal.
Really? Oh, like Austin and everything.
Yeah, Houston, Austin, Dallas, San Antonio, and El Paso are all completely liberal, but it's so huge of a state that it's usually a red state. But this past election, it was like very close. It was blue for a while, and then it went red, and it's just because of all those like people in bumfuck nowhere wind up, they changed it. So
Yeah.
I feel like by the next by 2020, it might wind up being a blue state. So it's been a long time since it's been blue.
Cool.
But anyway, point was, I went to Colorado. My wife got high. I read a bunch of books. We ate some food. I went to Mile High Comics. It was a warehouse. They didn't have any whales, unfortunately. That was it. So yeah, sorry for rambling about that, guys. But did y'all do anything big the past week or 2 weeks since I've seen y'all?
You mean interesting in my life or just comic book wise?
I don't know, both.
Go ahead, Luis. I'll try and make up something.
I've been playing Resident Evil, the new one.
Oh yeah, how is that?
Scary as hell.
Is it?
Yeah, it's my dog. Okay, the dog we have right now, he likes to howl in his sleep.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize this until my fiance told me the next morning. So I'm playing Resident Evil. It's probably 1 a.m, and I'm right down this dark hallway with only a flashlight, and then all of a sudden I hear, "Hoo!" right behind me. Freaked me the fuck out because I have the surround sound speakers behind me, and I have the ones in front, and it just sounded like it was right behind me. I'm like, look behind. I almost hit the dog. I really almost, by reflex, almost punched the dog. I felt bad.
Dear.
I have a scary story as well. When I was in Colorado, the last night we were there, I was trying to fall asleep, and usually every night we fell asleep like at like 10 p.m. or earlier because we were so tired and worn out. And
I
wasn't, but
right.
So for some reason that last night we were just tossing and turning, and like I would start falling asleep, and then my wife would like turn, and I'd wake up and I'd be like, damn it, like I almost fell asleep. So I was like, one of my tricks I used to use was if I couldn't fall asleep when I was in one bed, I used to go over to like my guest bedroom at my parents' house and sleep in that bed. And for some reason, a different setting would help me. So I was like, I'm going to go to there's a like bed in like a upstairs loft at the cabin we were at. So I was like, I'm going to go up to the other bed. My wife's like, oh, okay. And I go up there, and as I'm up there, like I put my like book and bottle of water down that I brought upstairs with me. And I hear like weird like noises and voices, and I just noped the fuck out of there. I didn't even grab my water or anything. I just ran downstairs. And I like opened the door, like threw the door open. My wife sees me standing there, and I'm like, something's fucking up there. So I'm sleeping down here. I'm pretty sure it's because I was reading Tommy, the book, and I'd read about half of it right before I was trying to fall asleep. And so like all of a sudden I'm thinking I hear some shit, and I'm like, fuck this shit. So that was my scary story.
Let's see. I don't have a scary story. My whole universe the past 2 weeks has been Cowboy Bebop. I'd never seen it before, and Sherlock Alexi from the group, also known as Alex, one of the mods, sent me all of Cowboy Bebop, including the movie. So I've got tomorrow to watch the movie. I'm up to episode 23, and I was told you need to watch the movie between episodes 23 and 24, and it is great. I've never seen anime before, so I have nothing to compare it to, but I really love it. The only thing is everybody smokes in it, and so it makes me want to smoke. Practically even the dogs smoke, so it makes me want to smoke. But it's really fun and funny and interesting and really well set up, so I'm eager to watch the movie tomorrow.
It's a good one. I think you'll
like it. Good.
All right. Well, I guess let's really quick talk about because I want to run through these and get straight to the main topic of Superman this week. Really quick, a couple things. If you read anything or if you got anything, if you guys wanted to talk about anything, go ahead.
Well, for me, I did the poll. Because the goal was, if I had $150, I opened it up for them to recommend something for me, as some of you guys know. And I was expecting the worst of the worst. I was expecting Rob Liefeld, Extreme Comics 90s, bullcrap. I was expecting some of the worst of the worst. Surprisingly, everybody was really cool, and they softballed me, which means I'm probably going to get it worse next month. Some of the choices were The Boys, Sculptor, and We Can Never Go Home. Those were the top 3 choices. So I did a poll, and Sculptor ended up winning out. So that's going to be the review that I do next week.
You're going to love that book.
I was really surprised at how thick this is. I got this hardcover for like $13 off Amazon. So I think I got a pretty good steal out of it. It's definitely looks like a thick read, but I'm looking at some of the panels and some of the pages, and the wording looks very minimal. It doesn't seem like there's much in terms of words or balloons, but it does look good. Now, I opened it up to everybody, and I asked them, what do you guys think about the book? I got mixed results. Some people said they thought it was overrated. Some people said they thought it was good. Other people said that it was phenomenal. So I'm really curious to dive into this weekend and get a review out. I also read Vision. Wow. That's
awesome.
all I'm gonna say, because I know we're trying to get to the main topic, but that's really all I'm gonna say. The review for that should be out within like 1 or 2 weeks. Fantastic. Lived up to the hype. I was a bit disappointed in the first few issues because I had my own preconceived notion of what I thought the series would be, just based upon some of the cover art and things like that. That completely threw me off. But overall, lived up to the hype very much. And the last thing I picked up, because I'm going to be reviewing this on Monday, is the 4th volume of Akira. So there's that.
No, you're blazing through the manga.
Yeah, I'm doing one a week.
Who? Let's see. Well, I can keep mine pretty minimal because I read one thing this week, and Luis has already reviewed it, and that is Sweet Tooth, which I hadn't finished all of it yet. And man, what a great series Sweet Tooth is. I can't say enough about it. I know everybody's probably already read it, but and Lemire's art isn't for everyone necessarily, but it certainly did a good job of conveying everything. And I absolutely got choked up and cried at the end. I'm man enough to admit that I definitely did. It's a roller coaster, but God, what a good book. I really, really enjoyed it. And I would love it if there'd be a hype train for Sweet Tooth, because everybody needs to get into that. It is an excellent read. And let's see, I can just plow through the books that I bought this week. Abe Sapien, latest Abe Sapien, The Goddamned, which I haven't read but heard great things about. Latest Scarlet Witch. Kill or Be Killed, which I'm really excited about. Harley Quinn, greatest character ever. Thank you. And Department H. That's supposed to be great. That's Matt Kent, and I'm really looking forward to reading that.
Is that the variant, Kill or Be Killed? Sorry.
It is. That is the DCBS variant.
Ooh, I'm waiting for the hardcover because it's Brubaker.
Right. I wanted to see what it was all about first. Deadpool. Amazing Spider-Man, because Riley recommended that. And then I'm taking a chance on Unfollow. I haven't heard anything about it or know anything about it, but I'm just blind buying it because it sounded interesting.
I think I mentioned it.
Oh, did you?
When you were talking about Clean Room. And
okay.
To check that one out.
Okay.
Also, both Clean Room and Unfollow are, I think they're ending at issue 18. One more volume of Unfollow and Clean Room to come out. So
okay, maybe that's where I got it. Okay. Yeah, so that's it for me.
All right. I have a lot of things that I got the past couple weeks since I didn't talk to y'all last time. So I'm going to try and just look around my room really quick and try to tell which ones those are. While I was in Colorado, I found a copy of Extreme X-Men Volume 3 Schism, which was at half price. So I was like, hell yeah. I just needed that to complete the collection.
Nice.
I bought from one of the guys in our group the Stand Omnibus, the adaptation of Stephen King's novel, at a really cheap price. So that was really awesome. And then let's see, there was a few Wolverine books that came out. There was one Wolverine Weapon X Unbound by Larry Hama with Mark Silvestri. Picks up right after the second Hama and Silvestri volume. And then there was the Wolverine by Daniel Way. As much shit as I give Daniel Way, I actually enjoyed much of his Wolverine material when I read it initially. That was years ago, though, so I might have a different opinion now. And then the oversized hardcover edition of Wolverine Origin 1 and 2 together. From the DC side, I got the new Green Lantern Hal Jordan book with the Emerald Dawn stuff in it, the new volume of Hellblazer. I'm sure some other stuff, but I really can't recall offhand right now what that other stuff was. And then I also grabbed the first volume of Department H, and I pulled it off the shelf because I didn't know if either of you would have gotten it, but Jess, you did. And I just wanted to say I'm super excited to check that one out because I've read the first couple of issues, and it's really awesome. I just never got the chance to read the rest of it, so I'm going to check that out, get caught up. And then I already know I love Matt Kint, and I love Mind Management, and this series is just another really, it's another hit from him. And then the last book I wanted to show off was that I got from Mr. James Dayrit. Sent me the Prometheus Fire and Stone hardcover from Dark Horse. This thing is a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be.
Oh yeah, it's big.
Giant! Wow,
huge. I mean, it's as big as any library edition, but it's much thicker than any of them that they've released so far. I've checked. I've lined it up, and it's definitely thicker. It's huge and has beautiful artwork throughout, and great writers writing it. And I am currently on an Alien kick, an Alien/Predator kick, because this has some Predator and AVP material in there as well.
Oh, it's just not about Prometheus. It's got other stuff in there too.
Yeah, it's Alien, Prometheus, Alien versus Predator, and Predator. All those stuff combined. So I've been watching all of those movies in like chronological order. So I watched Predator 1, 2, Alien versus Predator Requiem, Predators. And then I started Prometheus last night, and I got cut off because Megan was like, I don't like this movie. And I was like, damn it.
I like Prometheus.
I do too. It has a lot of flaws, and the characters are
yeah.
stupid, but I overall liked it, especially as a piece of the that whole mythology.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited. I'm going to make my way through the rest of the movies. I've seen all of them except for the last Alien movie, Resurrection, which I've heard is pretty crap, but I put myself through Predator 2, and I really did not like AVP Requiem, except for the final scene. So
Resurrection makes Predator 2 look like Casablanca.
Okay. Well, I've made myself endure worse, so.
Oh, it's bad, man.
I mean, I watched Batman versus Superman, so I should be okay.
Up for a lot of Razzies this year.
And then the one book that I read that I finished, because I haven't finished Tommy yet, was the first complete collection of X-23. This goes under the category of I can't believe I didn't read this stuff before, because those stories are just fucking phenomenal. Especially the 2 6-issue minis by Kyle and Yost. Just kind of going through her background, her past, her creation, her childhood, and it leads through like her first appearance in, I believe it was her first appearance in a comic was in the Nyx series, and so it kind of leads us up to that point where we initially met her, and it's just phenomenal. I love them, and now that volume goes through the first few issues of her most recent ongoing series by Marjorie Liu, and I have so I'm making my way through that now, about to start the second volume, so really excited about that. And that's it for books that I've read and other stuff and books that I got this week. And now I guess we can head at 7:30 on the dot for me, head right into our main topic for this week, which is Superman.
Sorry, I'm a sucker for the Richard Donner films.
I actually was singing the song or humming the song at work today.
Oh, it's so iconic.
Yeah. Anyway, so we're trying something a little bit different this time. Instead of going like a round table and just talking about whatever book we've each chosen, I thought it'd be a good idea for this video to go from the origins of the character and run through several books that we have wanted to highlight through to the most modern stuff. So talking a little bit maybe about Rebirth and stuff like that. So we've got this, cavalcade, if you will, of various Superman comics, and each of us has our own stories that we've read and chosen. I will admit to you right now that I have no knowledge. Like I know a lot about the creation of the character because I wrote about it in my thesis for college, and I have no knowledge until Crisis. So that's a big gap of like nothing, and then Crisis. So that said, I'm hoping, like what we're hoping is that Jess might be able to use his old man knowledge and the fact that he was there back in the creation of superheroes. Fill in a little bit of the blanks there.
So how does it feel to see Timely Comics become Marvel?
Shut up.
All love, man. All of them.
It was good. It was all in color for a dime back then. It was wonderful. 100 pages for a dime. Are you goddamn right? You kids get off my lawn.
Is that a sugar-free soda, Jess?
It is, yeah. It's Coke, Cherry Coke Zero.
Hey, good for you, man. I'm actually in the same boat with Riley. My knowledge on Superman is pretty limited. It's not as extensive as a lot of comic book readers out there, and in fact, I'm diving into him more lately because of everything going on with the Rebirth line.
Okay, well, I'm happy to start with the very beginning, the Golden Age Superman, Omni, which is a gorgeous book. I have the first 3 volumes, but it does show how rudimentary a character Superman was. In the beginning, as you can see, he's I don't think they have the red S yet. It's like yellow. And
very primitive version of the character.
Yeah.
He couldn't even fly.
No, as a matter of fact, he jumped. What he did was he jumped a long ways. He had super strength and a bit of invulnerability, but he also was tossing guys out windows and throwing them and apparently killing them from 1938 to 1940.
Dissimilar from Batman back in the day was, using guns.
Right. So he was tossing stuff about with criminals. He would just toss them, and they were really basic plots. I don't know how much I need to get into his origin. Everybody pretty much knows it. But
at the time, there wasn't anything like back in the Golden Age about him being an alien, right? It's just
they said that he came from the explanation eventually came out that he came from another planet. I mean, that's what developed. First, they just had Superman as this Superman.
Yeah.
Then it developed that he came from another planet, and they were all super strong there on the planet. Then they changed it to the yellow sun. That he came from a planet with a red sun. Then the yellow sun is what amped him up, and he had a lot of interesting things that actually happened to him because of movies and radio show. He became instantly popular, and like you were saying, he couldn't even fly. He leapt, but the animated cartoons back then, it was too much of a pain for them to keep showing him jumping and leaping. So they asked DC to make him fly, and that's because it was cheaper to animate a guy just flying in a cartoon at that point. So that's how he developed that ability to fly, and then they also had he got to be so powerful that they
themselves into a corner.
Exactly.
and had to create something.
Right, because he was invulnerable to everything. But I thought it was interesting when I found out that. Sorry?
I was gonna say because you're gonna bring up Kryptonite.
Yeah.
Well, wasn't Superman a direct response to World War II? Was it the Great Depression? I thought it was World War II.
He's meant to be a symbol of hope,
right?
That was created during a time when, literally Great Depression. Everyone's in this negative state of mind back, in the late 30s. And Superman's brought out there with his brightly colored costume and his insignia, and these two Jewish men come out and give us this Ubermensch character who's meant to bring us out of being so glum and inspire hope in the people. And it worked. You got someone that you believe that nothing can bring him down, and he was really meant to show us the optimum that you can be, not only as physical strength, but in spirit, the optimum that a person can be, as as happy and as hopeful as anyone could ever possibly become.
Yeah, that's interesting that you referred to him as Ubermensch, because I haven't seen anything that said it was a direct response to the two Jewish kids. I haven't seen anything that said it was their way of battling anti-Semitism to sort of create a character that maybe represented them in the fight against good and evil. I always wondered if they felt persecuted, and that they came up with this guy in response to that.
If I recall correctly, and it's been a while, there's symbolism, Jewish symbolism in the colors used for his emblem, in the original emblem, and it was meant to have some sort of symbolism. That's kind of why I put that out there, right? With Jewish guys, because it was meant to kind of be their way of putting someone that could represent them out there. So you already with one of the first heroes, and DC's debut and the most important hero of all time, you have people trying to establish representation for minorities.
Yeah,
and he was. Oh, I'm sorry, Jess.
No, go ahead.
He was really the first of his kind. There was no superhero before Superman. He was 100% whole original. It was a brand new idea at the time, and I gotta imagine it must have been really exciting for kids to see, wow, this guy has these abilities, these powers. He can do, jump buildings and stuff like that. That's part of the reason why he's called the father of superheroes, or the grandfather of superheroes.
Yeah, I think in Pulp Fiction, not the movie, but real pulp books, things like Doc Savage.
Yeah.
I think that the seeds were planted there, and with books like Doc Savage, and I think that, and then they had Siegel and Schuster had Slam Bradley already established, I believe, as a character, and I think they just took him and sort of jacked him up to sort of fulfill the Superman idea that they had. But I think you're right. There was like the Phantom and Doc Savage, but there was nobody mysterious with superpowers in 1938 at that time. One of the things that I thought was interesting, besides the ability to fly, but the idea for kryptonite was introduced in 1943 as a plot device to allow the radio serial voice actor Bud Collyer to take some time off. So they must have poisoned Superman with kryptonite to give the actor some time off. But that's where it came from. And same thing with It's a Bird, It's a Plane, It's Superman. That came somewhere other than comics.
I think Jimmy Olsen originated elsewhere as well. He wasn't a comic original.
I think he originated in a radio show, didn't he?
I'm gonna double check, but I think that I knew the kryptonite was from the radio show, and was created for, get him out of the corner. But I didn't know it was to let the actor take some time off.
Yeah. And he was a popular voice. I remember he did, I mean, this shows you how old he was, but back in the late 60s, early 70s, there was not Superman, but there was like the Superman cartoon. I can still hear the theme song in my mind, but he was Superman's voice then, 30 years later. So he was always Superman's voice as far as I was concerned, because and those, gosh, I loved those growing up, The Adventures of Superman. That was before Super Friends, which I had as bed sheets, Super Friends in college, my Super Friends bed sheets.
I remember Super Friends. Dun, 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 dun. Like, you'd see them running into the front of the screen and everything, and it's like, oh my gosh, the Super Friends.
So I found it. Jimmy was introduced to the radio show on April 15th of 1940.
He was introduced where?
On the radio show.
Oh, okay.
In 1940, and the reason being mainly so that Superman would have someone to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, a lot of interesting things were created outside of the comics. Then I also read that when Whitney Ellsworth came on to was hired as editor, he decided to tone down the violence and the social crusading. Sexuality was banned, and colorfully outlandish villains, such as Ultra Humanite, which I forgot he existed back then, and Toyman, were thought to be less nightmarish for young readers. So that's when the sort of code of conduct for Superman came in. So he got to kill for 2 years, and then the kibosh was put on that.
Was that the comics code?
No, that didn't come in until the 50s.
Yeah.
This was Whitney Ellsworth's code that dictated that Superman not kill. But Mort Weisinger was the editor on Superman for a long time, from 41 to 70.
Wow.
Yeah, that is a long time. And that is when we got introduced to things like Bizarro, Supergirl, Phantom Zone, various varieties of kryptonite. I vividly remember Superman in Clark Kent's closet had robot doppelgangers of both himself and of Superman and Clark Kent, so he could always count on his robots to take the place of him, to appear in two places at once. And Weisinger liked lighthearted stories, and which is really apparent in the 50s and 60s. He was afraid to tackle things like the Vietnam War and the Civil Rights Movement because he feared his right-wing views would alienate his writing staff and readers. And I can just tell you from experience that the books of the 50s and 60s were really lightweight. They were interesting to me as an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old. I look back on them though, and it seems like every other issue was an imaginary story where the first time an imaginary story happened where we got introduced to Superman being killed, but it was told as an imaginary story. Like Lex Luthor actually kills Superman, and it's like a 3-part thing, and all these aliens are mourning him because he was a hero of the galaxy, but nothing really ever happened. That was an imaginary story. Lex Luthor was always after Superman to try and kill him out of a power struggle because he wanted to take over the world. An imaginary story that was famously awful. I can't remember what kind of kryptonite it was. Maybe it was red kryptonite, but it split Superman into Superman Red and Superman Blue. And they were both dressed in, one was blue, one was red, and they completely solved all the world's problems, the two of them. And it was remarkably awful, and it was so uninteresting. Even as a kid, I thought, I don't get this. Why? What? I mean, this doesn't make any sense to me. And it was an imaginary story, and they could go anywhere with those. And it was that's, I think that, you know, and at that time, Batman was always off in space fighting aliens, and there were these really lightweight stories all through the Silver Age.
Zur-En-Arr.
Right. Batman of Zur-En-Arr. And that's sort of what opened the window for Marvel to come in with just a little bit of real life, with like Spider-Man having his problems as Peter Parker, was a response to these really lightweight stories that were throughout the Silver Age, until about I'm going to guess it was probably 1971. It was a famous Neil Adams cover where they erased Kryptonite Nevermore. The art was by Kurt Swan and Murphy Anderson, and it was exquisite. They had Clark Kent become a news anchor working for Morgan Edge back then. But they also had like some kind of sand creature was created. When Kryptonite was destroyed, a sand creature was created that was Superman's problem for a while. And so that was like the first thing that happened that made Superman interesting, was there was no Kryptonite. And it took a long time for anything to happen interesting. The last part of the Silver Age is when Alan Moore wrote Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. That was interesting because it had everybody in it were remnants of the Silver Age. There was, you know, Crypto, the Legion of Superheroes, Supergirl, Brainiac, Mixius Pitlick, and also I remember you had in it Elastalad with Jimmy Olsen and Insect Queen Lana Lang. That's what the 60s were like, when Jimmy Olsen was like Turtle Man and Elastalad and Bumblebee Man or whatever. But Lana Lang turned into Insect Queen, and she had all kinds of powers. And Alan Moore wrote these all into a story as a way of saying goodbye to the Superman of the Silver Age and introducing us to the reboot that Superman eventually had right after this. And it was a way to acknowledge the past and say it's time for us to restart. And it was I will say, as much as I realized that comics were made up, it had the death of Crypto in it. And that really made me cry, even as an adult, because Crypto was attacking Mixius Pitlick in it, who was introduced as this imp from the fifth dimension.
And that's part of the reason why I've never read it.
The Silver Age?
No, that specific story, just because I have a thing with dogs dying where I'm just like, I can't do it.
Oh yeah, it was heartbreaking. But Mixius Pitlick was like an imp from the fifth dimension that was created as a foil for Superman. He was like a prankster, and in this book, he's an evil killer. Because he's just gotten bored with being a prankster, and it was a good sort of coda. It's a famous book, obviously. It was a good sort of coda, a way of acknowledging everything that Superman was. And actually, in this same book is one of the great Alan Moore stories, which is called "For the Man Who Has Everything." And it's when Mongol manages to get a alien plant on Superman that has, it's so well written. It has him, I know I'm kind of going off topic here, but Batman and Wonder Woman and Robin discover Superman paralyzed in his fortress with this alien plant around him, while Superman dreams his dream life happening. And it's a great story about how they turned the tables on Mongol. It's Alan Moore at his finest, and that's included in the deluxe edition. So that brings us up to, I don't know, past the Bronze Age, more into the modern age.
That brings to Crisis.
Right, brings us up to Crisis. And I'm happy to turn that over.
Because Alan Moore did those stories as closing of everything that came before Crisis, closing that era out. And then after Crisis, you get the new Superman comes in, and we get I can find it in my stack of books down here.
Well, yeah, one thing about the Silver Age was the creation of all the various Earths. There was Earth A, Earth B, Earth 2, Earth 3. There were all these Earths. Originally, Earth 2 was created to justify the existence of the Justice Society of America from the 40s. And then it just exponentially increased. Every year you got a Justice League event, like a 2-part event, versus the super criminals of Earth 45B. And there were all these Earths created, which led into Crisis trying to figure it out.
That's part of the reason why I like New Frontier so much, because in a way New Frontier is kind of the passing on of one generation to the next. And you see that transition gradually happen throughout the story.
Yeah, and so Crisis was invented to sort of wipe the slate clean and get started fresh.
It was I mean, people talk a lot of shit about Flashpoint, but that's what Crisis did.
Yeah,
exactly.
I like Flashpoint.
I love Flashpoint.
I mean, the shit talk about Flashpoint and then New 52. The initial shit talk was all about like, how are they gonna do that and like wipe everything clean and then blah 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 blah. It's like, I remember having this back. I think it was it 2011 when New 52 started, and I mentioned several times online and to people. I was like, I mean, in 85 or whatever, Crisis on Infinite Earths kind of did the same exact thing. I'm sure it pissed a lot of people off too. But you have to respect the fact that, it's not like something that they're pulling out of their asses. It's something that's happened before. But after Crisis, the first Superman story that we got was from John Byrne, and that's the Man of Steel, this miniseries right here. And eventually it would lead into his ongoing tenure on the Superman titles. Man of Steel, though, this I believe it's just 6 issues, but this miniseries meant to reintroduce us to Superman and his mythology for a new age. Now, this is this point's going to come up later. This is 15 years after Denny O'Neil started his Bronze Age run on Superman in 1970. With that Sand Superman story that you were talking about, I believe was the first one. So this is 15 years later. They're reinventing the character again for a new generation. So we have each issue kind of runs through a period of Superman's life. So we get like this opening issue that has a lot with the crypt. Ooh.
Did you break the book?
Oh.
It's really poorly glued, so that just
oh, bummer.
So the first issue has these Kryptonians. You see him as a baby on Krypton. His parents sending him off planet as the planet is about to explode. He gets sent out to Earth, and it skips. That's the prologue, and it skips to chapter 1, where we see him as a teenager in high school, on Earth in Smallville, and you get introduced to his family and all that. So you see, Ma and Pa Kent, and all of a sudden this baby that you saw thrown off planet is being raised by humans, and it just goes forward from there, and you get to see, his initial steps as Superman, taking out some villains. Eventually he's introduced to all the main players, you get Jimmy and Perry and Lois are in there, and everyone at Clark's job, and he gets introduced to Superman. Or sorry, Superman gets introduced to Batman in there. So you see like all these important points throughout this miniseries, so that you would have this proper idea. Here he is talking to Lex for one of the first times, but throughout there you get that idea of, you know, what has happened with this character, where he's come from. Byrne brilliantly establishes in 6 issues, I believe it was 6 issues, these all these stories to establish his history, so we don't have to sit there and wonder, which was one of the things that they didn't do as well.
Right.
When you got to the New 52, you had to sit there wondering, like, well, what's still canon, what's not. With this, Byrne just lays it all out there for you and tells you, like, this is a basic history of the character. These are the characters he's interacted with. And then he throws you out there into his ongoing run, where he keeps, writing Superman for a few years thereafter. And I have not read the rest of that run. I've heard a lot of good things about the rest of that run. But I do know that somewhere closer to the end of that run was where one of the times that he did kill Zod. So that's one of the only things I know about that.
Some of those volumes are free, right?
I believe the first one and the one that I have here and the 4th one are the hard ones to get, I think.
Yeah, I know number 4 is hard to get.
I haven't tried to find it very diligently yet, but I've heard that it's not very easy to find.
Okay. It's a shame that we don't have an omnibus of this material yet. You would think they would get on it.
It was there was a recent poll by, was it Jeff Dyer, I believe was the gentleman's name, in our Facebook group, and he had a poll that he gave to one of his buddies that works at DC, and it was for all the different omnibus that we want to see printed, and he organized it very nicely into golden, silver, bronze, and post-crisis age books. And that Byrne Superman, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was one of the top, if not the very top, voted on for post-crisis.
I could imagine, of course.
Yeah.
It's an iconic run.
Yeah, it's and they just recently completed the trade paperback collections, if I'm not mistaken. So it's crazy that it took so long for them to finally release all that. But Byrne's, if you can find it or get it through ulterior means, that miniseries is an excellent little origin. And I'm a sucker for Superman origin stories. I love the first Superman movie. I love that book. I love any Superman origin story, as long as it's not written like absolute crap. Because I love seeing that story of him as a kid coming into himself, finding out about his powers, all that stuff. And Byrne just does it marvelously, to say the least. So after that, I don't know exactly. I don't think anyone has anything else between this and the next item that I was going to go towards, but this is going to be a big jump. The next major thing that I know in Superman would come, I guess, about a decade later with Death of Superman.
Mm-hmm. The comic that broke Death in comics.
Yeah. And, I mean, Jess, did you have anything from between that? That's because this came out 92.
92, yeah. No, I didn't have anything between those two things.
So, Jess, which polybag did you have? Did you have the super secret deluxe edition polybag? The
I had that
one?
I put it. It's somewhere in my collection, but I had that one. I had 2 of them, and I opened one to read the issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was at the height of polybag mania.
Yeah, comics will pay for college, right?
Right. And also, here's my Doomsday Pop in honor of Death of Superman.
But I know, Jess, you brought this one up a couple weeks ago. You brought up Death of Superman, and we're going to talk about it. We're running out of time, and I think that's where we got the idea to do a Superman show. so we would actually have time to talk about this stuff. But flash forward from that miniseries in 86 or so, 85, 86, over to 92. So that's not too long, about 7 years, 6, 7 years, if my math is right. And you get to the death and return of Superman arc. I just have the paperbacks. Jess, do you have the omnibus that looks nice?
I do. Yeah, this guy.
Okay. So we have Superman finally meet his match. And it has nothing to do with kryptonite. It has nothing to do with, Lex Luthor using super science to finally take down Superman. But it's just this, it kind of was science. But more so, it's not like, laser beams and crazy shit taking him down. It's this beast that comes out of seemingly nowhere, wreaking havoc. Just plowing across the country and destroying everything, and then Superman meets up with him, and they duke it out until both of them fall. And Superman's not, beaten by kryptonite or by Lex Luthor's genius. He's beaten by a brute force. He's beaten by a punch.
Yeah, and Doomsday is. He pretty much wiped out every single person, like every single member of the Justice League on his way to Superman. Superman was the last stand. Like, he whooped Booster Gold's ass throughout that book. Like, it was bad.
Yeah, one of the things I thought was interesting that I picked up was the panels leading up to the final issue, how they did it. They went from like 3 panels in the third to last book on a page to 2 panels on the second to last book, and then finally when the death of Superman, it was all 1 panel each page. So it was a cool break from tradition where it was all the whole last issue was just 1 page apiece of art, and I liked how they came up with that concept, going from 4 to 3 to 2 to 1. But
I want to point out that when Doomsday first came out, one of the first things he did, and how he's a real piece of shit, was he
oh yeah,
I remember that. Yeah, to show he has no sympathy for life.
I was like, why? Why would he do that? It's not like the bird was someone trying to stop him, and he just sits there and lets it come into his hand. It's like you let a butterfly land in your hand instead of like enjoying the beauty of this, like sitting on your hand. He just fucking crushes it, and I was like, what? It didn't do anything to you. Why would you do that?
I think it's also important to note that because of this miniseries, we ended up getting things like the Nightfall arc, where Batman gets broken, Parallax, taking over Hal Jordan, all that stuff. This was kind of, in a way, the catharsis of that stuff.
Everything went towards,
grimdark.
Yeah, going darker, grimmer, and introducing like new versions of characters or replacement characters. I want to check the dates on everything just to make
please do.
Yeah, this
like Azrael, remember that
too? And Nightfall started in '93, so that was directly after that. And then what's the story arc where Hal Jordan is Parallax and kills everything?
Oh, what's it called? I completely forgot.
That happens.
That's before, isn't it?
No, that happens during Return of Superman.
Okay.
Because I believe it's during, right after something, because Cyborg Superman is directly responsible for what turns Hal Jordan kind of into Parallax, like the tragedy that he befell, because Cyborg Superman, if I recall correctly, destroys
Coast City.
Yeah. Anyway, but this is not Green Lantern episode. I just wanted to point that out. So it's like this domino effect that happened, like, Superman dies and then everyone else is dead too, or gone, or not in use, not able to be their, the actual superhero, and we get all the replacements, and we had Azrael for a little bit. We got Eventually, Kyle Rayner would take over as the only Green Lantern for a while, which saying it right now is funny because that's kind of exactly what's going on at Marvel. Like, all the main heroes are gone and being replaced. And it's happened like a domino effect, one after the other in the past few years. So it's very similar in timing. But yeah, returning to the death of Superman, following the actual fight and Superman's death and everyone, you know, that shock that something like that could actually happen to the greatest hero on Earth, simply because some monster punched him. We get the World Without a Superman arc, which I believe, Jess, you said you thought was more interesting.
I did think it was more interesting than the actual death of Superman. Yeah.
You get to see the world and Superman's closest friends and allies, and even some of his enemies reacting to what has just happened. And it's, you know, a few months of just this lamentation for their hero.
Right. Yeah, I thought, and I liked the concept when it first came out of who the replacement Supermen were. I thought that was an interesting reaction. There we have mullet hair Superman.
Oh, it's glorious. It flows so well.
Return of Superman after the funeral for a friend, when there's, you know, the world has no Superman, so what happens? They, you know, a few months later, they need someone to replace him, and you get these 4 different people step up to bat, and you've got and before Mullet Superman comes in there, and you've got all 4 of them are telling you, I'm Superman, you know. It's not Superboy, he's, you know, I am Superman, don't call me Superboy. And you get you know, Cyborg Superman, and you get the John Henry Irons starts going around as
Steel.
Steel's the only one, I believe, that does not claim to be Superman, though.
Right.
He's the one who's like, I'm not Superman. I'm just, you know, going out there in his name, using his symbol because I want to represent, you know, what he stood for. So Steel's the only one not trying to like steal the limelight. And
see what you did there.
The sunglasses Superman, the Eradicator.
The Eradicator, right.
That was I believe the name of that one, and he had an interesting like connection to Superman, and was kind of, if I recall, created as like a reaction to the fall of Superman once he died, because you find out that when Kryptonians die, at least when Superman died, he goes into this like resurrection tank thingamajigger, and
the regeneration matrix. Yeah,
that's it. Yeah. Yes, you can probably say a little bit better because it's been a while since I read that.
Yeah. Also, thanks to this event, we got the wonderful Shaquille O'Neal movie Steel.
Yeah. You know what? I love everything about Shaq.
Same. I like that movie.
I love Shaq. I love Shaq Soda. I love
Kazam.
Yeah, Kazam. Shaq Fu.
Oh, Shaq Fu.
Shaq Fu. That's just a cool name. I like Shaq Fu.
It's a kung fu game, isn't it?
That Shaq ever did or said, that Gold Bond commercial where Shaq like shaking. That's one of my favorite. I think I had that image as my cover photo on Facebook for a while. So anything Shaq is cool with me. But it wasn't a great movie. I mean, when I was 10 or whatever, it was cool, but
there's still a little piece of my heart where I'm like, I know it's terrible and I haven't seen it in like 20 years, but still, I like that movie in my heart.
Well, that's a movie I missed, so I don't know how good it could be.
Of course.
Well, maybe I'll go back to it and watch it and still have the same love for it like when I rewatched Space Jam.
Space Jam still holds up.
Space Jam, isn't that like your favorite movie ever?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to get the Space Jam pops when they come out, I think.
I feel like I should.
Yeah, if you really like Space Jam. But yeah, the Eradicator stole Superman's body, used the regeneration matrix to, let's see, some gas interacted with the Eradicator, passed through and into Superman. returning his powers, and the Eradicator's body degenerated into a lifeless husk. And blabbity, 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 that's how Superman got back his life, thanks to the Eradicator.
Kind of like really roundabout bullshit that happened, but I really dug that part of the story, like the whole reign of the Superman, the return of Superman, that piece of it, because it was super interesting, no pun intended, to see all these different guys and how they were trying to, in their own way, replace Superman, and seeing the rest of the world react to it. And you have all these other characters, some people actually believing like that's Superman, and then people citing, like, people were like, well, I side with Steel and I side with whatever. So it was a really interesting storyline. And of course, like you said, the Eradicator wound up leading towards this roundabout way of Superman coming back, and he has a mullet. So
not just a mullet, a super mullet.
The mullet.
The mullet, and I mean, it is glorious the way it flows in the wind.
And of course, the mullet was going to be featured in the Nicolas Cage Superman movie.
Oh yeah, that's a famous picture. That's a famous photo. I love how the whole idea came up, though, where I can't remember who it was. I watched that that video that you sent me, Luis, about how they came up with the death of Superman, where they came up with a whole idea for a line of for Superman for the year, and it interfered with the Lois and Clark, the Dean Cain and what's her name TV show that was going on at the time. It sort of interfered with the storyline, so they had to wait. Why am I blocking on that actress's name? So Terry Hatcher. And so they went back to the drawing board, and one of the editors just said, let's kill him. And everybody just sort of stopped and pondered and said, okay, let's kill him. And so that's how it just, I mean, it wasn't some real long thought out process. They just said, what are we doing? Let's kill him. And so that's how it turned that whole year into the death and return of Superman.
Yeah, they did not expect that they would get what they got out of it.
Right, and what made it such a huge impact was it was a very slow news. It was like a vacuum of news. There was no big events going on at the time, news-wise, and the media just latched onto this thing. I remember at my comic book store back in '92 that the news came in the day that issue was released, The Death of Superman. A couple of news stations came in, and I got interviewed on a couple of news stations regarding, as I was in there, regarding the death of Superman. And my answer was, they're not going to kill off a character that is worth $1 billion to them. So I have a feeling this is only temporary. And I'm not going to get wound up about the death of a fictional character. They actually used that on one of the broadcasts, and they were like, well, this guy seems to be taking it fairly well.
Oh my God, I want to find that.
This nerd seems to be handling it okay.
Well, everyone else is like, why would they do this? I feel like
And Jess is just standing in line going, ha, nerd.
Nerds.
I feel like I would be the same way, because I never get, I'm like, they're going to come back. Like, I would have been the same way as you said. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, I thought it was a creative way to bring him back. I knew we're going to have to leave him dead for a while. And I just wondered, how are they going to bring him back? Because they can't let him be gone for too long. So that's why I thought that was the most interesting part of it, is how they ended up bringing him back and what things were like without him.
And now, as Luis had mentioned, this book opened the door on death in comics, because before this, it wasn't a common occurrence to see characters die and come back. You were dead and you were gone, and you were gone for a while. But Superman was gone for what, a year, maybe 2 max?
Yeah. The only thing that I lightly disagree with is I think Crisis was the first one that brought in death when it killed Barry Allen and Supergirl.
But they did because Barry Allen didn't come back for a while.
Didn't come back for a long time. He didn't come back till like Flashpoint, practically. It seems
it
like
was officially he was completely back during Rebirth of like, Flash Rebirth.
Yeah,
that was a good mini. I liked Flash Rebirth.
But I know he had appeared a few times throughout other Flash stories. Like he appeared alongside Wally West. But Supergirl, I don't follow her. I know there were other Supergirls that would pop up here and there.
Not to get too far off tangent, but didn't Barry came back around the time Blackest Night, right? Where he comes back and like Wally sees him and goes, Barry? And he goes, hey, Wally. And it was like a really touching moment.
Right.
The Flash Rebirth miniseries led directly into the events of Blackest Night and the Blackest Night Flash miniseries.
Yeah. Right. Okay, that's right.
Which was written by Jeff Johns, and then he, basically replaced Wally West with Barry Allen as the Flash.
Yeah.
Which upset a lot of people who Wally West was their Flash.
Yeah.
But yeah, Supergirl though, did she come back? The same Supergirl. Did she ever come back?
I can't answer that because I haven't read my Supergirl that I have from the 90s or anything. So I mean, I can't answer that. Maybe somebody in the chat can answer that.
And I just saw Gio said Final Crisis, and yeah, that's where Barry actually came back. Was in Morrison's Final Crisis.
Oh, okay.
Chased by the Black Racer, and
yeah.
Came back from like he outran death is basically what their strategy for bringing him back was, and then you get the Rebirth miniseries, which reestablishes him and the Flash family, the Flash franchise, very similarly to what they did with Green Lantern Rebirth several years before. But anyway, back on to Superman. So now we have Mullet Superman back, and he's a little darker and a little broody. He's wearing a black and silver costume. If I recall, he has a machine gun.
What?
In
a machine gun?
Yep,
why?
Some sort of gun right on this page. Hold on.
Where's Gabe when you need
holding a gun right here with his black and silver costume. I don't know if you classify it as a machine gun because I don't know if it shoots machine gun rounds.
I forgot about that.
Here he is. This is the 90s at its time.
Oh my God, it's so glorious.
Your Man of Steel firing, with belts of ammo on him. This is some fucking X-Force stuff right there.
Yeah.
Superman, if he was from Rob Liefeld, right there.
I'm hoping to see that in Justice League.
When I read that, I was like, what? But at the same time, I was like, all right, I'm in. I'll go. I'll keep reading this. And overall, it turned out great, but I still don't understand the need for the guns and shit. But the mullet stayed for a little while, and that brought us into the mid 90s for Superman, and another kind of black period for me where I don't really know anything that happened with Superman from that point until the 2000s. I don't know if either of y'all know anything from there.
What year did Morrison take over JLA? Because he had Mullet Superman in JLA.
JLA #1. I could probably just look at my book, but I don't feel like standing up right now.
Wasn't that the 90s?
That was 97.
It's right there.
97. So it's just a few. Yeah, my book is right here.
It's such an effort for you.
So 97, which is just a few years later, is when Morrison comes in and he establishes JLA, the Justice League of America, bringing back the big 7 characters. Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Lantern, Aquaman, and Martian Manhunter.
And his whole concept was these are the gods of the DC universe.
Yeah, and this is really it's not the beginning of Morrison's DC Comics stuff, but it's kind of where everything that he's been doing, that this is like the crux. This is kind of where it began. A lot of concepts that he's used even now with like Multiversity, the latest thing he's done, come back from this. And if you go back and read that and go forward, these concepts are so strong at the beginning of this run. But yeah, we definitely had Mullet Superman there, and we also got Superman Red and Blue again. I never read those stories. I read his appearances in JLA, but thankfully, during that time when Morrison was writing JLA, he didn't really do anything about it being Superman Red and Blue. He just, had to use that costume.
Yeah. Oh God, this is stupid. I hear Morrison right now.
Yeah, here it is. Issue 5, the cover of it has Superman Blue. As the JLA has a bunch of new people. The cover has like characters like Plastic Man, Steel, Connor Hawk, and even Hitman, the character from the Hitman series, is in there. But yeah, so we went through Superman Red and Blue. I know that was some bullshit, and I don't really feel like wasting time talking about it. But
well, yeah, let's ignore that time period.
It's your show. Talk about what you want.
I mean, if you guys have anything to say about it,
no.
please.
No.
Okay.
No.
It's Luis's kryptonite right now.
Not Superman Red and Blue.
God, the electricity. So much electricity.
So I do know at that time, though, was when I believe Steven T. Seagal, no relation to Steven Seagal, was to take over on Superman, and he was approached to take over the character. I believe somewhere around the 90s, around that time on the character, and I'm going to look up exactly when that was. I had the first issue, might still have it somewhere, of his run, and he did some interesting stuff as far as using Supergirl. Let's see.
Oh, I didn't know that he actually went on to write Superman. I just read the graphic novel, It's a Bird, It's a Plane, which I liked a lot.
Which was his, he came out and wrote that kind of in a response to his ideas whenever he was approached to write Superman.
Right.
He comes on there at, and it's not a long run. It's like 10 issues.
Okay.
Oh, never mind. I just skipped ahead too many years. This was 2003. But I guess I'll run backwards in a second. But yeah, Steven T. Seagal is one of my favorite writers that I don't think gets a lot of attention. For that reactionary book, which is It's a Bird, like you mentioned, about his relationship to Superman and why he was so hesitant to even write Superman to begin with, because he did not have a great relationship with the character. But eventually he decides, I'll go ahead and write it, and he writes 10-issue run on Superman. But around the year 2000, I'm looking something up right now just to keep myself in line. Around the year 2000, that concept that I mentioned earlier about the 15 years. So you have, 71 was when we got the Sand Superman, the Denny O'Neil on there. 15 years later, reinvented again after Crisis on Infinite Earths with John Byrne. And then 15 years later, go to the dawn of the new millennium, and there's this concept that's thrown out there. And I sent a link to Jess and Luis earlier because I told them I wanted to talk about this for Superman 2000. And I don't know if any of y'all are familiar with Superman 2000, but this concept was an idea from Grant Morrison. It was pitched to DC because he said that every 15 years we get this rebirth of the character, and every 15 years they kind of reintroduce him for a new generation of readers. And with the new millennium coming around, it was time for that current reiteration of the character. And Morrison's idea here was, and it wasn't just Morrison, he was just the one that wrote the pitch and sent it out to DC. It was going to be Morrison with Mark Miller, because they were still friends at the time. Mark Waid and Tom Payer were going to be writing together as this brain trust the ongoing Superman stories. And the idea was not to write these stories as, 4 different ongoing titles like they might have had in the past, Man of Steel, Adventures of Superman, Superman and Action Comics, but to have one brain trust of creators constantly working together, sending scripts back and forth. And as Morrison said, these are people who were friends before they were writing together at the time, between Morrison and Miller. Mm-hmm. So they knew that they could work well together, and they would, write together to make this cohesive script so that, as he said, there wasn't one guy always being shoved to the side having to write part 4. Everyone got an equal voice in there, and he said something about how he and Mark were more writing from, the high concept stuff, while the other 2 were writing from the heart. So you got a good mix of the sci-fi with the deep characterization of who Superman is as a being. And the idea of the actual story would be to, and this is something that comes kind of gets used in a couple of different stories later. Going off of the concept of his powers coming from the yellow sun, over time, he's developed these powers even further, and all of a sudden, he has a state of consciousness about him that's further strengthened than he's ever had before. And it kind of takes him outside of himself for a while. He's in this even more godlike state where he can sense things quicker and with more depth than he ever has before. And it was, meant to take Superman to a completely different level of power. But at the same time, after he got used to that and he goes back to, kind of getting his head level again, it was also meant to return him to being more human. And there was a lot that was going to happen between him and his alternate identity as Clark Kent. There was a lot to happen with his established place as no longer as like the superhero, the end-all be-all superhero, but he was going to have appeared later on, and this is meant to kind of enforce that, Jesus Christ figure that they allude to a lot with the character. But the JSA is the original group of superheroes, and they Dr. Fate foretells the coming of the ultimate hero. And he foretells that and says, we need to raise him, we need to train him, we need to make sure that he does everything is good. So the JSA now has this new place in Superman's history. Superman comes out and he's, the greatest thing that anyone's ever seen, blah, blah, blah. Different things are going to happen with all of his characters, with all of his villains. And the idea was scrapped, and it never happened. But we did get a few years, down the road, we would get All-Star Superman out of Morrison, which would take a little bit of that concept of, charging his cells with the sun and send him on this, this kind of Hercules' 12, whatever it's called. It wasn't challenges, I don't think, but it's this allusion to the Hercules stories, and telling him, you've overcharged your cells and now you're going to die. So that story obviously is one that has become one of the most outright praised Superman stories of all time.
Yeah.
Morrison with Frank Quitely, and Luis has talked about it quite a bit on different occasions, which is why he said that he was fine with me leading the discussion on that book this time. But yeah, so Superman, All-Star Superman, there's a lot to be said about that book, really.
It's brilliant.
It's a brilliant piece of literature that works so well, because I think it As much as I love it, I still only have the paperbacks. I'm surprised I have not upgraded to the absolute.
Wow, you owe it to yourself.
I am very surprised, but it's just Morrison does a beautiful job of combining his high concept ideas with also something that's very very grounded and very relatable for people that are reading it about this hero. And it's because of those reasons that it's one of the books that I recommend to people every time I find out that someone is like, Superman sucks, he's a boring character, I don't like him, I don't care about him. And I'm like, okay, please give this book a chance. And I hand that to them, and they come out of it like, I'm sorry, I have seen the truth and the light.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those books where you give it to somebody and they go, okay, I get it. I get why he's such a prominent and important character.
Yeah, and Morrison just did in this book like a beautiful job. One of the things that a lot of people will point out is his like single page origin for Superman.
Mm-hmm.
And that was huge. And then putting him through, you know, this gauntlet of different things, and you get him with every single important character from his entire existence. You know, he's not every single one. I know there's some missing, but most of the biggest characters. And it's similar in that way to the John Byrne miniseries, in that one introduced us to everyone. This one is closing that story off. This one is really taking us through and showing us the final meetings with Superman with all these various characters before he goes off and you know, becomes the Sun, basically.
And Frank Quitely's art in that is amazing. I firmly believe it's the best work he's ever done. And
Yeah.
I still think it's the best work he's ever done. Who was the colorist on that? Was that Dave Stewart?
Jamie Grant.
Jamie Grant. Okay, because the coloring on it is incredibly well done as well. It's gorgeous. Colors just pop left and I mean, there are some panels in there where it's just like, oh my gosh, just gorgeous stuff. And there's a lot of iconic panels in there as well. The one where he's kissing I believe it's Lois on the moon. Beautiful panel.
That's the story where she gets to be Superwoman
for a day. Yes.
Yeah. So she's able to actually go out there. And there's another great issue was the entire Bizarro issue.
Oh yeah.
He introduced us to, was it Zabaro? A Bizarro.
Isn't that a pizza place?
Sabara's. Zibaro, which was like a Bizarro version of Bizarro, who made sense on Bizarro World. But that issue was just crazy because Morrison took that Bizarro idea and turned it to 11 by making sure that everything that he said was actually the exact opposite, instead of just like a few, like, you know, me not Bizarro. Like that's how most people would do it, is like simple, like opposite, you know, stupid things. But he made it like everything was the exact opposite of what he meant, and it just enhanced that experience a lot. But on Quitely's art, one of my favorite ones is the prison issue.
Oh yeah,
there's so many panels in there. If I can find that in here, where they're just running through you know, Quitely's panel work, having them move from one panel to the next as they run through the prison is just incredible. I think I found it. Yeah, there's like them going down staircases and stuff, and it was just really visually so impressive. Especially because this book was one of my first introductions to Quitely, and seeing that like work like that just blew me away and really had me put him as one of my very favorite artists in comics.
And we've harped on this a bunch of times, me personally as well. I believe it was issue 8 with the girl who's about to jump off the building. We've talked about it a lot of times. I did a video on it and things like that. But like I've said on this channel before, to me there is no better panel or series of panels that just gets the character and gets what he stands for. Like in those few panels, Morrison gets it.
Yeah. I get choked up still when I read that particular part.
Oh, same. To this day, I cannot look at that without just almost tears coming down my face.
Yeah.
It's great because he's proven in that story that he understands every single aspect of the character.
Mm-hmm.
Not just, the superheroics, not just, his compassion, but
The intelligence.
He gives you every aspect of the character in this 12-issue miniseries, and it makes me angry that Superman 2000, like that pitch, never happened, because it's obvious that if given the chance, they would have done some incredible work with the character and on that franchise, and really done some great things at DC.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, we didn't get that, and we got some other runs and stuff on Superman. Another one that happened a little earlier than that, another miniseries that's not in canon, was Red Sun. And I know, Luis, you were going to say some stuff about Red Sun.
Yeah, Red Sun is basically an Elseworld Superman story, and it's written by Mark Millar. I have it here with me. I love Red Sun. It's a bit over the top, like Mark Millar usually does. And the essential premise is, what would happen if Superman landed in Soviet Russia during the height of the Cold War? We're talking Joseph Stalin, all that stuff. Soviet Superman, as you like to say. I love this. It's fun. It's over the top. It's just an interesting premise. And Mark Millar does what he does best, where he takes a small little nugget, changes something around, twists it, and goes with it. It's a great idea. I like the whole concept of Superman arriving in Soviet Russia and being raised by a Russian family and then conscripted by the Russian government, and you have like a revolutionary Batman that fights Soviet Superman, and he's got like the little hat and everything. It's just a fun read all the way through. You don't need to know anything else about the characters because it's self-contained. It's an Elseworlds tale. For those of you that don't know, Elseworlds was a series of DC comics that were out of continuity, and essentially the whole pitch was, what would happen if you just changed this one little thing about Superman? There was even a Elseworlds story a few years ago where what would happen if Superman's family had gotten off Krypton with Superman as well and lived on Earth, which I thought was actually a pretty good miniseries.
What was it called? I don't think I've read that.
Oh, I forgot the name of it. It's only a few years old.
Huh.
But the general premise is, what would happen if Superman's family, like all of them, made it off the planet with him and made it to Earth?
Oh, I want to read that.
It was really good. The art was good too, if I remember correctly.
That reminds me, another something I forgot about that Superman 2000 pitch, which was a little heavy, was about his parents and Krypton and stuff. They said that they thought it didn't make much sense for his father to know anything about Earth, and it would enhance the quality of the storytelling if it wasn't that the rocket that Superman was sent off on was guided towards Earth, but they just sent it off in desperation, and it happened to land on a planet that happened to be Earth. So that was just a small thing I forgot to add in there, but I thought that was a really great idea. Don't have him, be actually targeted towards another planet. He's just floating out there on the hope that he will live.
Mm-hmm.
But around this same time, actually the exact same year that All-Star Superman hit, we got the beginning of another huge writer on Superman who would write it for a little while, and that is Jeff
Scott
Johns.
Lobdell. Oh.
Yeah. Well, Jeff Johns. And Jeff Johns' first stuff was actually co-written with Kurt Busiek, who was writing, if I recall, the character a little bit before that. I've heard mixed things about the stuff that came before this, but the first Superman by Jeff Johns was this story, Up, Up, and Away. And Johns would go on to continue writing the character for a little while. He has another big story that he did was Last Sun, actually with Richard Donner.
Yep. Who Jeff Johns was an intern with when he first started out.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that.
He worked on the movie.
Oh, cool.
He also there was also a Goonies 2 script that never got made.
Yeah, even for the better, because I feel like
there's a great interview with Kevin Smith on Fat Man on Batman involving Jeff Johns that he goes through Jeff Johns' entire history. I recommend you guys check it out. And he talks about working for Richard Donner as his assistant, how he didn't know how to drive this, like he didn't know his way around, and he drove probably like for 3 hours. And then Richard Donner, because he went to get Richard Donner's car detailed, and Richard Donner called him like, "Where the fuck are you?" He goes, "I'm like 3 hours away. I don't know where the car wash is." So, but it's a good interview. You guys get a chance to check it out.
Definitely check it out. But yeah, a couple other. There's Escape from Bizarro World, the Superman and the Legion of Superheroes with Gary Frank. Again, with Gary Frank was the Brainiac story.
Oh yeah, that was good. That was really good.
Which would lead into the New Krypton.
Right.
I actually have not read any of that New Krypton stuff, but Brainiac would lead forward into that. Brainiac was a big turning point for the character. But Jeff Johns' run, it lasted over a few different years on Action Comics. He would do some work on the New Krypton, which would lead into War of the Supermen, which was one of the last stories that happened before the New 52 came out. So it was this really, huge crossover that was going on. I didn't read any of New Krypton. I know it had a lot to do with a bunch of other Kryptonians. I just never got around to it because I was more interested in just reading what Johns himself had written. But Johns is huge. Johns it's a big deal. Superman's obviously a character that has a past with him and means a lot to him. And seeing him on here, he does a wonderful job writing the character because he gives him that heart, and he does a fantastic job of showing the relationships with him and his different characters, and he hits on all those notes, having him with the Legion. There's stories with him and his family. Last Sun, of course, going back to some more of the mythology with the Kryptonians, all that stuff. And I'm sure you guys have some words to say about some of these stories.
I'm getting fired up to start reading a bunch of Superman this week. I'm going to start by rereading All-Star and then start everything else.
I'm going to reread Kingdom Come.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one to reread.
Yeah, I didn't even mention Kingdom Come.
We completely flew by it, yeah.
Yeah.
But, yeah, did y'all have any specific things to say about any of the Jeff Johns Superman stuff?
It's been so long since I've read it, but I remember it being really brilliant. Like I was all for it. And the stuff with if I remember correctly, the Richard Donner stuff specifically, the artist in it drew it like if it was Reeves. Christopher Reeves. He drew it. If I'm not mistaken, like the appearance is pretty close to Christopher Reeves, and I was like, this feels kind of like a natural continuation of those classic films.
Well, I know for a fact Gary Frank draws Superman as Reeves, but Frank did not do the Last Sun story arc. But I'll show you. It was Adam Kubert did Last Sun, but if you look at Superman from Brainiac, that's very much Christopher Reeves.
Yeah, that's all him.
So he does that, and they also, I don't have this on my shelves, but they also did the Superman Secret Origin miniseries, which was very similar to the Man of Steel miniseries I mentioned earlier. in that it runs through his history and sets up a lot of those characters and stuff. And that was a really good little mini series. And Gary Frank, I think, is kind of the Superman artist. Like, he's one of the people that I believe was born to draw that character. Between him and Quietly, I think they're my favorite Superman artists that I've seen. And probably Patrick Gleason as well with his new stuff. But that after all of John's stuff, and we get into, like I said, the New Krypton crossover, War of the Supermen, that brings us to around the time at DC where Blackest Night was happening. And so a lot of things were huge bombastic stories, and they started toning it down a little bit, bringing it back down to earth. And we would see two roughly year-long stories happen for Superman and for Action Comics. In Action Comics, and I believe I mentioned this in another video, was the Black Ring storyline, which actually follows Lex Luthor.
Oh, right.
Because in the events of Blackest Night, Lex Luthor got a taste of the power ring. He got an orange ring, as the cover here suggests. And he is just thirsty for more. So this storyline shows him as he kind of journeys around the globe, searching for stuff so he can get a black ring. And it's a really great story from Paul Cornell. The ending was a little bit quick for my taste, but overall, really, really well done story. That after that, Paul Cornell did some bullshit Doomsday storyline that I read a couple issues of. But the other story that was going on was J. Michael Straczynski came on to both Superman and Wonder Woman. And on Superman, he was writing a story called Grounded, where Superman decided that he was going to walk across the country.
I thought that was a great storyline. I really enjoyed that.
I read a few issues of it, and I really liked the first issue, but I got kind of weary of it after a while, and I never finished it. And if I recall, JMS never finished it either because he was replaced by other writers to finish the stories off.
That led right up into New 52, right?
Exactly.
Grounded?
Exactly. So that wrapped up, and by the time that was done, we were seeing Flashpoint come out, and Flashpoint had their very own version of Superman, which was this just tiny, weak dude.
Yeah, I thought that was a cool treatment of him.
Yeah.
Weird. I think, wasn't it? They locked him up as an experiment.
He was so deprived of the sunlight and everything.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting little version of Superman that Scott Snyder wrote or co-wrote the miniseries of Flashpoint Superman.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know Snyder wrote that.
I forget who co-wrote it with him, but
cool.
You can tell he was not the primary writer on there because it was not up to par with any of his other stuff, especially what he was doing at the time with Black
Mirror,
American Vampire. But then we get into the New 52. And of course, in the New 52, we have the two main Superman books are back. And I haven't read the beginning of Superman in there because I just was not really interested in I think the creative team was actually Perez came back, but I wasn't really interested in what he was doing with the character in there, so I never read it. But what I did read was Grant Morrison's 18 or so issue run on Superman, which started out with another retelling of kind of the origin story of Superman, not going back to the absolute origin, but kind of just the beginning of him, Clark Kent, becoming him as Superman. This weird version of the character that's so different to anything that we had seen before, where he's really brash and kind of an asshole, and he's younger and interacting with all these different characters for the first time, and it very, very much symbolic of what the New 52 was as a whole.
A lot of fans hated it.
Yeah, there was a lot of negativity about it in the beginning of it, and I think a lot of it did have to do with the attitude that Superman had, but also Morrison reimagining all these different characters like Metallo and Kryptonite Man, I think, got an appearance in there. But what really got me was not so much that opening, like the opening arc, it's collected in this Superman and the Men of Steel, where they kind of reintroduce Superman, show him in his first days as a superhero. That was fine, but what I really dug was after that, they get into these really crazy stories with second one, Bulletproof, that deal with was it the Phantom Zone and characters coming out from there. And one particular was named Zadu, which I'm sure was meant to be in the New 52 version of Zod until they actually introduced Zod in the New 52. But it just continued to be really interesting stuff, and it kind of bounced back and forth in time. And you saw this storyline with Brainiac in there, where Brainiac was actually like explaining, he's always been there, and he tells Superman, I'm what you guys call the internet. So Brainiac is like embedded in our society. And yeah, that was like a big, everything culminated, whatever Morrison was doing into his 18 issues on Superman. And then after that, the franchise just kind of went to shit for a little while.
Yeah.
Luckily, not too long after that, we did see Greg Pak come in, both on the Batman Superman series and on Action Comics.
Yeah.
And Pak showed that he had a real great voice for Superman.
Mm-hmm.
They're still using this, bold and brash Superman that's unlike the one that we had before. So a lot of people are still like, this is not my Superman. Superman wouldn't act that way. Like, there's a lot of negativity towards it. But we got a few really great stories from that New 52 Superman. And towards the end there, after, 60 or so months of New 52 issues plus a bunch of, number 0, number whatever the fuck, number
the annuals, yeah,
all that shit. After Convergence, that bullshit, we wound up getting to this big crossover in the last couple months before Rebirth started, and it was the final days of Superman, which I know, Luis, you mentioned to I don't remember if it was just to me and Jess or to everyone that you've been reading that.
Yeah, I haven't read it, so should I leave? Are you going to give spoilers?
No. It's been real good so far. I'm only halfway through it, but I've been digging it a lot. It's definitely makes you feel for D-bag Superman.
Yeah.
No, it really does. Like, you're like, oh man, like he's doing all these things, and he's basically going around. He's like, hey, I'm trying to set up these things. I'm trying to find Supergirl. He's basically kind of trying to make a tone and set things right before he goes, because he knows he's dying. He knows this is the end. And I'm just kind of interested to see how they're going to lead up to, because I know there's this, and then there's Lois and Clark, which comes after this. I'm interested to see how they're going to lead up to pre-New 52 Superman going back into the universe. And I know that has a lot to do with Convergence, which I don't think almost anybody read.
The only thing that really had to do was Convergence had introduced the concept of the bottle worlds, and that there were these other timelines out there.
Yeah.
That still existed, and there was a little bit of cross between them after that point. So that's the one, really good thing that Convergence gave us, was it opened up the possibility to see, pre-Flashpoint Superman return. And Final Days of Superman, I mean, it's exactly what the title says. It's the final days of Superman, and exactly like Luis was saying, he's going around and atoning for all these things. And it's also it's coming after this real gauntlet that Superman has gone through. Mm-hmm. And if you follow, just look at like the year or so leading up to that point, and you have Jeff Johns did another short stint on Superman, where he brings back that concept of over radiation for Superman, and he has this like solar flare ability.
Hmm.
He uses the solar flare, and it's this huge blast that helps him to defeat the villain that he's going against at that time. But it also just drains his cells and takes away all of his powers for a while, and you get sent into this storyline that it's meant to last not too long. I believe it was like a day or something, of him just going around without powers, and he's actually like using his cape to wrap his knuckles in so he can fight people that approach him, because the cape is actually stronger than his skin at this point. So it was this kind of interesting storyline that led into that, and so he's finally back. He's finally got his powers back by the time the final days of Superman has come around, and you get to see him interacting with all these different characters, and there's this other thing that's out there. And one of my favorite things about it is the story actually has reference to the Sand Superman.
Oh, okay, good.
So that was really interesting to me, and it leads into. Sorry, I'm trying to readjust my butt here. I've
Let
got.
me help you there.
I've got.
Am I echoing?
Yeah, that's you, Jess.
What do I do? Do I got to sign out and then sign back in?
No.
I don't.
There you go. I think you're good. You're good.
What? Okay.
That leads us directly into Rebirth, which, I mean, it's out there now, so it's not much spoiler, but Rebirth now gives us not original, but like pre-Flashpoint Superman back instead of D-bag Superman from but I will tell you that even if this story gets rid of that version of Superman, it sends him out on such a high note that you wind up being sad. Like, I'm just going to let you know that. Like, you're going to be sad to see him go. But we get now the Rebirth era. If anything has come from Rebirth, it's been the rebirth of Superman stories.
Yeah.
And it has given us fantastic stories with the return of pre-Flashpoint Superman, who is kind of reluctant to come out because he's kind of been in hiding. And he's reluctant to come out, but he comes out and he takes on the role of Superman. But now in the Flashpoint universe, everyone knows what has happened. Everyone's seen this happen. And you have all these people, just like back in Death and Return of Superman, popping up and deciding that they're going to kind of take his place. This time, one of those people is actually Lex Luthor, who's wearing a power armor that is now, instead of purple and green, it's blue and red with a big S emblem on it. And he's like, yeah, I'm your new Superman, Metropolis. But all of a sudden, Superman shows up, and he's like, what? You died. What? Like, we all watched it happen. And you see these other characters like New 52 Lois Lane reacting to that as well. And she's like, wait a second, but what? And that's the big ongoing crux of the Rebirth stories, is that reaction to, where does this guy come from? He's not the real Superman. Who is this guy? And one of the big things about Rebirth is meant to be the memories coming back to some characters of everything that came before, the things that were erased from their past. And you're starting to get these characters that are remembering things, and he's one of those big cruxes, him and Wally West, returning those memories to everyone in the universe. So that's pretty much where we are now with the character. I don't want to spoil a lot of the current storylines, but I can just tell you that pretty much the entire Superman franchise has taken a 180 and gone from being, some good stuff and a lot of crap to it's the best franchise I think that DC is putting out right now is their Superman stories. And honestly, I think that's how it should be. The Superman story should always be one of the strongest things that the publisher has out.
Oh, absolutely. He's your flagship. Well, no, I'm getting echo. No?
What?
I've got an echo going through. Okay. But I agree, absolutely. He's one of your flagship characters, if not your flagship character. I know they'll say Batman is, but I would say more people want to be Superman as a kid. I think we all have that memory as a kid of putting on the towel, around our neck and just running around the living room or something like that, going wee, pretend like you can fly. It's as a kid, I always wanted to be more Superman than Batman. That was just me. Like you said, I love what they're doing with the character now. I've read a few issues of the Rebirth stuff. I love it. I have not read the Action Comics run yet. I've just read Superman, so I don't know how the Action Comics stuff is, or if it ties in too much. But I'm super ecstatic about everything going on with Superman.
It's good. That's the one with the Lex Luthor stuff more so, whereas the Superman focuses more on
His son.
Yeah, it's about him and his relationship with his son, which I think Tomasi has proven that that's something that he enjoys writing about and is good at writing about, is the father-son relationships, because he focused on that back with Batman and Robin. And it's really interesting to see the development of this character of was it Jonathan is his son's name?
Yeah. Now who's writing that Action Comics?
That is from Dan Jurgens.
That's Jurgens.
Who
Okay.
wrote the Lois and Clark mini.
Okay.
I think that's the best thing Dan Jurgens has ever written.
Yeah, he's really gotten kind of a return to form, except better than he had written back in like the 80s.
I totally agree with that. I used to not like him, and I loved Lois and Clark.
I think I've heard really good things about some of his stuff in the 80s, like his original Booster Gold stuff, but everything that I've read from, like, I guess from the 90s through to until Lois and Clark, well, I haven't read Lois and Clark yet, sorry, but until that point, I've just been bored with it, and I'm like, why is he such a big name in comics? And now with this Superman stuff, I'm like, okay, all right, I can see it.
Yeah.
But so that we're current now. That's Superman.
That pretty much covers it.
I'm going on a huge Superman kick after this. I am so fired up to read everything in my library again or for the first time.
The next thing we're gonna see is Jess posting on the group, like, does anyone know where to get Man of Steel Volume 1? Volume 4?
I'll keep it to the stuff I already own.
I was joking with James Dayrit the other day in a we were chatting a little bit, and he mentioned that series, and I was like, I bet if I was to track down Volume 4 and start buying all of the series, then they would announce an omnibus. Like,
yeah,
how it works. But I'm gonna agree, Luis, what you were saying about Superman and every kid wanting to be Superman, and it's the reason I think it's important for DC to maintain that positive output from their Superman creators is because they need to continue to be spreading hope, just like the character was initially meant to be. And sure, the stories might be a little more mature, a little darker than they used to be, but you can still have Superman out there with a smile on his face, spreading hope and love like he was always meant to. And that's something that the Rebirth Superman stories have given us. That there's moments of darkness in there, but it helps the light shine through so much more and so much more beautifully.
Ooh, that's a good way to put it. Did you just come up with that, or did you read that somewhere?
I probably got it from somewhere, but I don't know.
It's a really beautiful way to put it.
But it's it's given me more hope than I've had for the franchise in years now. More hope just seeing what they're doing with the characters now than I've had since as long as I can remember. As long as I can remember ever reading any Superman since like All-Star. And it's amazing. And unfortunately, they're not on the same page with their movies, but I'm hoping that the current how well those comics are doing might inform some of the changes that they should give to the movies. so we can see a little bit of more brightness and hope over there than we have.
I would hope so.
I still liked Man of Steel, and it could be because of my man crush on Henry Cavill, but I definitely liked Man of Steel.
That's okay. I've talked a lot about. I enjoy Man of Steel quite a bit, and I was very hopeful about Batman versus Superman and how it was going to handle what had happened in Man of Steel, and then it didn't handle it well, and it didn't give us a great follow-up to Man of Steel.
Yeah.
And that's where I lie, and that's where my problems come from. Because I'm like, I was in the camp, like, Superman killed in the comics and blah, 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 and this is his first time going out there and doing stuff, and that's why he's not good at saving people and all that. Like, I was in that camp. I was like, okay. And I can also see all the issues with the movie, too, and that's fine. Like, I can acknowledge things that I like are not perfect. I will acknowledge all the issues with those things. Mm-hmm. But they didn't follow up in a positive way. And I'm upset because that's not Superman,
No.
That's all in the past now. We have only the future to look forward to. It's the future's bright now.
Yeah, it's not like Zack Snyder's directing the new Justice League movie.
Well,
oh God, he is.
Oh God.
But
okay.
We still have the comics, and like I said, I'm really hoping that these comics will inform the direction of the movies and not vice versa, as we've seen happen all too often the past decade or so since comic book movies have been huge. We've seen too many movies informing what the comics need to be.
And I will say, I know I bash on Batman vs. Superman and all those, but there are elements of Man of Steel that I genuinely did enjoy. There are parts of it where I was like, wow, they get certain parts of this character, they just don't get the whole.
I'll tell you what I think the best part of that movie was fucking Feora.
Yeah, it was cool.
That fight scene with Feora, I was like, holy shit. I was...
I like... pretty much up until it turns into Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, I mean, we should just give Henry Cavill some blonde hair, and then that would actually be a much better movie than Dragon Ball Evolution was.
No, I did. I dug the concept of Superman. He's walking around. He's still trying to figure things out. I dug all that. I love, that he's an Alaskan crab shoreman or whatever the hell he's doing in Alaska. Yeah. He's working on the deadliest catch, whatever that was. I like that. I dug that. It was cool for me. As a character, not the most depth that they've ever given him, but there were parts of it that I enjoyed.
But I guess at this point, what do we hope for the future? Now we've gone through his history and the stories that we enjoy and the importance of the character in comics and in our society. What about his future? What are we hoping for? Aside from what I said about the future of the movies, but what are we hoping for the future of the comics?
That they keep this pace. I think that they keep what they've got going on right now. It's working.
Yeah, it sounds like it is
very well. That they just keep it this way.
Yeah, I agree. It sounds like it is headed in the right direction.
Any characters y'all are hoping to see back now that we have Rebirth set up?
I want to see a Batmite issue. I know it has nothing to do with Superman. Just all Batmite.
Batmite?
All Batmite all the time.
Yeah, I love Bat.
Well, I used to love Mixia's Pitlick, so I wouldn't mind seeing Mr. Mixia's Pitlick.
And he had a really interesting version in Morrison's... I forgot to mention that, in Morrison's Action Comics. A really weird interpretation of him in there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping, like y'all said, I hope they continue in the same direction, moving forward to greater and better things, even better than what we have now, as hard as that might be to believe. And I'm hoping... because there's a lot of, it looks like a lot of interesting storylines coming up. Right now, they're doing kind of a follow-up to Multiversity. Mm-hmm. Going forward, they're going to do something, I think Superman Reborn is a new story arc coming out, so that should be interesting. I just want to see more of Peter Tomasi doing what he's been doing with Patrick Gleason and whatever other artist that comes on there. And I don't ever want to see them leave. And if they do, or when they do wind up leaving the series and the franchise, I hope that DC continues to find people that know the most important aspects of this character and continue to give us these hopeful and bright stories that will inspire us every time we read the issue to want to be a better person rather than sit there and, be glum.
Turn into the Plutonian.
Yeah.
So what we're saying is, kids, sell all your Valiant stock and jump on the Superman train right now.
That's right. Big Blue Boy Scout.
There's a really great run of Superman during the New 52 by Scott Lobdell. Crossover called L on Earth.
Oh, yeah.
It's a fire sale, kids. Everything's Superman.
That I really recommend that one.
L on Earth.
L. So yeah, go buy it, and then we're not making any money off of this, I swear. It was supposed to be sarcastic, but at the same time, it's also true.
Yeah.
I did love
Valiant
when Supergirl became a Red Lantern. I did love that.
That was really fun. That was a fun little concept.
Yeah.
Valiant
I totally enjoyed that.
Valiant owes us so much money.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that one.
I mean, come on, we cleaned out in-stock trades for them.
Yeah, they ran out of stock for a second. I actually emailed them an apology. I was like, hey, we kind of mentioned.
Oh, that's right.
I emailed Emily. I was like, hey, Emily.
Emily, everybody's girlfriend.
I was like, hey, Emily. I'm sorry if there was a recent surge of orders on Valiant books, but it kind of, we mentioned them in a video, and then a group of people just it ballooned. It was a domino effect for sure on that one. Like, it's like one person said something, and then it just like.
Which in turn made pretty much everybody go, "Oh shit! These deluxe hardcovers are already out of print. Buy!" I
know. It's been crazy, and so many. Thankfully, so many people have been lucky in finding a lot of the ones that are out of print. I've found a few of them sitting in stores. I didn't pick them up though, because I'm poor. Not really. It's just I had a lot of other purchases I was making this month. But yeah, and but speaking of Valiant, I was gonna say I bet I know one book that a lot of people ordered last week or this week was Matt Kint's Ninjak hardcover.
Ooh, yeah, I did order that.
need to order it
before it's too late.
That's gonna be on, if I'm not mistaken, next week's order, along with Absolute Wonder Woman and Realm of Kings.
Yeah, next week's gonna be a brutal week.
Oh God.
I know 3 of the big books I'm getting, because I'm not going to grab that Silver Age Daredevil. It's just not really enticing to me.
Same. I'm passing.
I originally I planned on it just because by habit I'm like buy.
Same.
But I'm not going to read that though. I know for a fact I won't.
It's like you read my mind. I went through the same thing. I was like, I want to buy it because I love Daredevil and everything, but I snapped too. I was like, I'm never going to get to it. It's just going to sit on my shelf. So, and I'm not going to want to read it because it's early Stan Lee stuff. And other than this Fantastic Four, I'm not really a fan of early Stan Lee stuff. This Fantastic Four and Spider-Man, that's about it.
Yeah. No, I feel you on that. So yeah, I decided no on that, but the other, because there's like 4 huge books, and the other 3 I am getting, Wonder Woman, Realm of Kings, and what was the other one?
Alpha Flight.
Oh my God, how did I forget that? Alpha Flight, the Canadian X-Men. So I have to get that.
Yeah.
But I'm excited. It's going to be a good week.
It's going to be a great week.
First month is always the biggest one, and then my wife is like, how did you already blow through like most of your month budget?
Have we got an official number on that Realm of Kings? Like, what's the print number on it?
I think we did last week, didn't?
Did we?
During,
Did we talk about
I,
last week?
yeah, I think maybe
Oh,
Nick
We did.
came up with it, and it was he
It was like
had
9,000, right?
something like that. Yeah, it wasn't the 3,000 we thought it was, but it gradually got smaller. Realm of Kings and then Prelude got even smaller, but it wasn't tiny like 3,000 like we thought.
Yeah, and War of Kings just went out of print.
Yeah.
Yeah, when it went purple on diamond, they still have copies. Like it's no longer being printed, but it's not out of stock yet. Well, it is on in stock trades, but it's available on a lot of other websites. So you can still get it without thinking you have to pay over cover, even though some people on eBay would beg to differ. But I guess at this point, take a few questions from people because we've wrapped up our main conversation for the day, and talk a little bit about whatever these people want to ask us about. I just saw John mention that he bought my Mind Management single issues back in the day, and I do remember that. I thought I recognized the name.
Oh, that's funny.
But I do remember selling to you. That was a fantastic series. I had most of it in singles, if not all of it.
They really want us to talk about Superman 64.
What a terrible game that was.
God, that was such a
I
piece
played
of shit.
that game one time. I rented it from Blockbuster.
Yeah, I think I did too.
And I remember plugging it in and hearing, or not hearing, and trying to do anything.
Yeah.
And completely failing.
Yeah.
And I didn't even rent it. It was my friend that rented it. And I was like, wow, this game fucking sucks. Let's do something else. And years later, a few, maybe a couple years ago now, I was frequenting a retro video game store like maybe once a week and buying random shit. And I remember seeing a copy of Superman 64, and it was 25 cents. So there we go.
Yeah, me and my friends, we went full on Office Space on that game. We took it in the backyard and just beat the shit out of it. God, I hated that game. So many rings.
Too.
Oh, so many rings.
There's someone asking for what the hell is Resurrection for the X-Men and stuff. I just clear that up right now. It's basically just the next era of the X-Men. With the current X-Men versus Inhumans, the Inhumans are going to be booted off into space. They're going to have less interaction with the people on Earth and the rest of the superheroes. And the X-Men are rebooting, more or less. This time they're supposed to be going more towards the superhero stuff, rather than being always on the run from the next thing that's going to kill them. So that'll last, for a year, maybe two. But there's some really cool creative teams out there for some of those books. It's basically meant to be a jumping on point. So that's going to be, if you're not already reading those books, you can jump on at that point.
Ooh, a Batman spectacular. We can do a Batman spectacular sometime.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That would be fun. Yeah, Batman would be fun.
Same type of thing. I have about the same knowledge about the first 40 years of Batman. I remember I don't remember. I wasn't there like Jess, but I know about his creation and then skip ahead to like the 80s.
Yeah, and I can fill in the gaps for the 60s and 70s like I did with Superman.
Let's do a Captain America one. When Captain America throws his mighty shield.
All those who oppose his mighty shield must yield.
Yes, he knows it.
Y'all ever see that really shitty Captain America movie where like the Red Skull was Russian?
Yes.
Yeah, that was pretty shitty.
He rides a motorcycle in that, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does, and I'm pretty sure that is the one, and he puts it on the front of the.
Yeah, the helmet is huge.
Yeah, that would be cool. Batman Spectacular. Shit, what was the other thing I was gonna answer? Best Superboy ever. The two Superboy series that if you're asking for the Superboy comics, the two that I really love are Jeff Johns' Boy of Steel with Francis Manapul. That's the first place I was introduced to Manapul. And I also love Jeff Lemire's Smallville Attacks, which is basically...
That was so good.
It's like...
I don't know that one. Show it again, please.
Jeff Lemire had a mini-series, and it was underrated.
Ran for 11
Attacks.
It had artwork from Pierre Gallo, and it focused on Superboy in Smallville, and he has his own, like, you know, other characters and stuff. And it's the best way to describe this is it's like Superboy if Twin Peaks was about Superboy.
Oh, cool.
Like, it feels like a David Lynch movie, and there's actually two characters in here.
How have I not heard of this?
I don't know.
It's so good.
Get your head out of wherever it is, Jess.
There's
My
a
head is right
poison
here.
ivy's in it. It's really good stuff.
But there are two characters, these two old men, who are actually drawn to look like David Lynch and Terry Gilliam. So it's very obvious that
How long has this thing been out?
This is right before the New 52. This was right before Flashpoint.
And what was the first book you mentioned?
The first one I mentioned was Boy of Steel. This is Jeff Johns with Francis Manapul.
Oh, wow. So Boy of Steel and Attack on Smallville or something?
Smallville Attacks.
Yeah. Okay, good.
I hope for your sake that both of them are still available.
Oh, my God. I hope for my sake, too.
Because they're fantastic stories. Superboy, the Smallville Attacks one, I remember, like, I was so into it when it came out. I was reading all the singles, and I was like, this is one of the best things on the stands. A lot of people had issue with it. Like, they were like, this is weird. And I'm like, yeah, it's weird, and that's kind of the fucking point. Like, get over it.
That sounds so cool to me.
I mean, it's Jeff Lemire, and it's one of the first things that Lemire did, like, superhero books. It was, like, the very first. It was like that, and he did this thing with the Atom. The Atom stuff has never been collected anywhere, so if you can read it somewhere, it's pretty interesting. But the Superboy stuff was just fantastic.
You get Smallville Attacks on Amazon for like 78 cents.
78 cents?
Used,
Nice.
yeah. And then $3.99 plus shipping, so it's cheap.
Okay.
Good.
And what about the other one?
What's the other one?
What was the other one again?
Boy of Steel.
Boy of Steel.
It's Jeff Johns relaunched Adventure Comics, and the first 6 issues he did with Francis Manapul. It was the first place that I was really introduced to Manapul's artwork, as far as, you know, his like kind of current style that he's been using, and that's where I knew I had to read The Flash when it came out. Really good story, really great stuff with Lex Luthor that really made me clench my fist and want to punch him in the face.
I gotta go for 1 second. I'll be right back.
Boy of Steel, you can get the hardcover for $15 used, and the paperback brand new is $15. But they're sold out on Amazon, so you got to go through third-party sellers.
I had a question towards me if I think I might start doing regular videos again, so videos that are not this. I would need to have someone do all of my editing for me. Like, I can't. I have no time and no patience for it anymore. That's 100% the reason I haven't done videos in as long as I have, is I can't. I work too long of hours and I don't have enough patience for it. And I used to have my wife used to offer to do that editing for me, but she stopped offering to do that. And when I've asked her, she hasn't done it. So that kind of sucks. But I can't do it, and I also don't like the stuff that I do. Like when I make a new video and I sit there and I want to edit it, I'm like, this is shit. Like I could do so much better, but then I've already run out of time. Like I tried to record a video once and I did it about 4 times, and that was an hour-long video. So I literally wasted an entire day re-recording, and I still wasn't happy with the product. So I just need to film something and then just send it to someone and have them. Like, I can't look at it. I can't look at anything I do.
I'm the same way. Everything I record, I hate. I don't think there's one video I think I've ever done that I'm like, oh, that was awesome. I'm like, I hate every single video I do, and maybe that's just the creationist in me, where all I see are the flaws.
Yeah, I don't know. I look at myself and I'm like, I feel like I could be doing a lot better. I could, I sound just like anyone else. On the internet, like I sometimes I just don't feel like I have a voice that really needs to be heard, because I'm saying something that someone else has already said. So I'm like, I don't know. I'm sure I'm just being really critical about myself, and that might be something to do with, like, I've been off of medication for about a year now, and I'm just getting back on. So with my anti-anxiety medication, I should be feeling better about myself and anything that I actually create. So that would be good.
Plus, editing is hard.
Yeah,
editing takes up a lot of time.
It
takes up a lot of time.
I'm like, nope, take that out, and you have to like go back like 50 times to do that.
Yeah, I front load everything I do on Sundays, and I wake up around probably 7 in the morning. I don't get done until like me and Jess do the news show around 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah, I don't have a day like that. Like the way my work schedule is right now, it's kind of unpredictable, and I'm gonna let you guys know, in about a month there's gonna be 3 weeks where my Thursdays I'm not gonna be free. So we're gonna have to find out either to have one of these gents take over for me again, or we'll move to a different day like we've done a couple times in the past.
Oh yeah, that's perfectly fine. Or like we said, we've got Gio. He loves to step in from a week in Geekdom. He's been doing great stepping in. We've got Gabe.
I really appreciate that. I'm hoping one day that I'm not the one that has to step out, and we can have I can experience doing one of the rotating chair.
What happened to the rotating chair?
I was just saying that.
Are you talking about rotating me out?
No, I'm just hoping that one day I can get to do a video with one of the other guys who has replaced me when I've been out.
It sounds like I'm being replaced.
You're not. No, we wouldn't replace you.
I'm messing with you.
Riley, when we replace him, we could finally do that manga video.
Shut up.
Okay.
We're asking for evil Riley story and evil Jess story, but I can't think of anything evil Riley, because right now I'm in such like this positive state of mind because I had like 8 days off of work in a row.
Yeah.
I went back today, and one of my managers is like, "Why are you smiling so much?" Like,
so people are demanding that we bring the intern on.
Bring Nick.
Oh, Nick.
Yeah, some people have been asking, when are we going to bring Nick on?
I heard he has no filter whatsoever, according to his old high school roommate.
I've heard that too.
Well, that should be good.
Yeah, he'd be a natural.
Oh, and then another question directed at me and my lack of videos would be about my X-Men readathon. So I reached a point where I didn't feel like reading any of the classic stuff anymore when I got after Inferno, and I was just like, I need to start reading modern stuff again, because I was basically not reading anything but X-Men. And I was like, I keep buying these books and I want to read these other books, but I keep not reading them. So I decided to start skipping around. So I've skipped around in my readathon, and instead of going into the Claremont Lee stuff and into the 90s stuff. I went forward into some of the later, like 2000 stuff, some of the other mini series and side series, and gave myself the ability to start reading other books. And at some point when I feel like I'm in the right place, I'm going to go back and start again from where I stopped and then go forward again. So we'll see what happens with that. But if there's any request for any specific X-Men series for us to talk about, for me to talk about on one of these shows, I'm happy to take it, because I can read that, talk about it, whatever y'all want to see from that.
I'm going to do a Superman readathon after this. And you can...
Starting from the Golden Age all the way through. All 900 plus issues, almost 1,000 of Action Comics.
He's gonna report back to us next week. I made it through the Golden Age. I'm in the Silver Age. Man, Golden Age Superman. Good stuff.
Anything else that y'all want to answer before we head out here?
I'm good. It's getting late for me.
Yeah, I never even ate dinner, so I need to go.
Oh, yeah.
I need to go. I can tell an Evil Jess story. It'll be real quick. I'm pretty sure my wife is... I don't think my wife is around, but I figured out how I'm going to do how I'm going to do Red Sonja, who's still in the box. I got the Red Sonja sideshow premium exclusive. I don't know why I did it, but I don't know why I did it. But I'm going to use what's known as the John Hahn protocol, where I'm going to pretend that 12 of you guys on the Omnibus page got together and bought it for me and sent it to me as a surprise. And it's a good news, bad news things. Yeah, these guys were really great. They got it for me as a gift, but now I don't know where to put it. So that's how I'll deal with the blowback there. These guys are just too generous. They bought it for me as a gift, and now we've got to figure out a place to put it. So maybe it'll end up as the dining room table mantelpiece or something, the centerpiece. I don't know. So that's pretty evil, and I'm hoping she's not upstairs listening right now, because then I'm fucked.
Yes. What the fuck?
See, I'm fortunate enough now, because of Patreon, I could write that stuff off on my taxes. So, yeah. Hooray for small businesses.
I should do that shit too. We were just working on our taxes, and I wasn't liking what my return was looking like.
Well, I can't do it this year. I could start, well, not last year, for last year's taxes. I could start doing it this year. For like cons and everything, I could write everything off.
That'd be cool.
You can write off your comic book purchases as long as you're reviewing them.
Yeah. But I wasn't making any money off of it until this year. Like, this is the first time.
You should still... I think you should be able to, because it's like establishing.
Yeah.
Like I've talked to people who have like cooking channels, and when they start out, they're like, "Oh yeah, I write off all my ingredients and all my supplies and all that stuff." I think you should be able to. Before we get out of here, I just wanted to show everyone one of the things that I recently splurged on when I shouldn't have bought anything, and it's a toy. I went to a local shop and I saw this set for some Batman figures for my favorite Batman movie ever, Mask of the Phantasm.
Oh, I need to see that movie.
This is
supposed to be great.
Absolute favorite. So it was a 2-pack of the animated Batman and then the Phantasm, and I thought it was fantastic, little 2-pack. So I went ahead and grabbed that.
We're getting pops of those.
Oh yeah, I think I saw that. But that's it. That's all I have to say this time.
All right.
Anything else, guys?
I'm good.
Nope, I'm all set.
All right. Well, that brings the close to another episode. I'm glad that, or I'm hoping that everyone enjoyed our little, take on Superman, our journey through his history, highlighting everything that we know. And our favorite stories. And I know we didn't get to some things like Birthright, unfortunately.
Yeah, and Secret Identity.
That one as well. That's another really good one.
Yeah.
But if y'all enjoyed this video, we can do more things like this later. I know someone already mentioned wanting to do Batman. We can totally do that. Jess can talk about how he hates Nightfall.
Which I see like right next to your head right there.
Yeah. I have the entire trilogy. I might go for the Omnibus whenever it comes out. But yeah, anyway, so maybe we'll do something like that. Maybe do other characters. I hopefully get it a little bit more organized next time so we don't have so many gaps. I really should have studied up before I went into this. But
well, I think we did fine. You guys are good at off the cuff stuff. I don't think there was any slow spots. I think it was good.
I appreciate it. My worry is just more. I was like, damn it, I'm skipping like a whole decade of stories.
I mean, the characters have been around for like 80 years. We're gonna have to miss something at one point.
Yeah, that's true.
No, but no, it was great. So thank you everyone for watching. We really do hope you enjoyed it. Let us know if you want us to do more of these and what characters we could do. And I guess on that, thank you both to Jess and Luis for joining us again this week. Next week, tune into Luis's channel at Hardcover Reviews. We'll have another video there. And before we go, where can they find you, gentlemen?
They can find me as Jess Bragg on Riley's Facebook page, which is the Omnibus Collectors Comic Swap and Community. Did I get that right?
You got it.
Yes!
Real quick, I want to mention that we're working really hard to take care of the constant influx of requests to join the group.
Yeah.
As I was on my little vacation, I noticed that it was around 125 requests.
Jeez. And
today it's about 75. So I know that I did about 20 of those. Someone else has been whittling away as well. But it's real annoying because basically we have to sit there and look at someone's profile and be like, do they look legitimate or do they look like a fake? Because we have had issues with trolls in the past. So it gets to the point where you're just like, I'm tired of looking at these people's profiles because I feel like a creep, like flipping through people's pictures and stuff.
They don't let me do it because I'm so bad at it. I let in nothing but trolls. I'm like, oh, this person has a Facebook account. Okay.
That's me and Lewis that do it. But I think Lewis also denies a lot of people that are legitimate.
Not this one. Not this Lewis.
Not you.
Right now, Lewis McGregor.
Ugly McGregor. That's his YouTube channel.
Oh, is that right? It's called Ugly McGregor?
Ugly McGregor, and he does film stuff.
Oh, he and Ryan Sace are Welsh bastards.
That's right, and fuck Greg Land.
There you go.
And then before we get off topic, Luis, where can they find you?
You can find me, you already mentioned it, at Hardcover Reviews, Facebook.com/Hardcover Reviews, and Twitter.com/Hardcover Review, Patreon.com/Hardcover Reviews if you want to help me out and keep my channel alive, and it helps pay for the books and all that good stuff. You can donate $1, get some exclusive content. I know me and Jess, we do a weekly news show, not covering politics or anything like that. It's mostly comic book news. That's been really popular lately. It's at the $5 level, and we crossed $300 this month.
Sweet.
Yeah, but that in part is by a huge donation from one person who, like, I'm not gonna say how much he gave, but it was a significant amount of money.
I remember that. Hopefully that pans out positive.
Yeah,
I hope so too. I'm hoping that it does.
That'd be awesome.
So, yeah, that's where you guys can find me.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you, everyone. Thank you, guys. And we will see you guys next week on Luis's channel. Until then, I'm going to go eat some chicken and go to bed.
Peace and love. Peace and love.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.